I'm Deborah Borcher, and this is your midday market update. Well, the Dow and the S&P 500 both down, but the NASDAQ up, mostly based on its Apple exposure. I'm here with Peter Costa of Empire Execution. So, we got our home sale numbers out at 10 o'clock. They weren't terrible, but the market wanted much better than we saw. I have to say, though, sales 10% higher than last year. The prices were up. The distressed home sales were down. So I liked the report, even though it wasn't what everyone wanted.
As much as I like it, Deborah, it's not always about what you think, all right? It's about what the investor thinks, and I think people are a little disappointed with those numbers. I think they were expecting them to be a little bit better. I mean, let's get over it. You know what? Market it's just soft because Apple's down. It's bringing a little. Apple's up. I'm sorry, and you look at some of the other ones. Google took a hit, so Google is not really weighing on the Dow, but it'll weigh on the S&P, and it's a very, very lackluster market, low volume. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of reason to be in it or out of it right now.
We did get earnings today from Caterpillar. It was definitely a disappointment, although they had said it was going to be a challenging quarter. Halliburton also a big miss, but they had a charge. So it just seems like this market wants perfection.
Well, they always want perfection. I mean, isn't that what we're all about? I mean, Halliburton, I looked at their numbers, and you look at their business model and how they're doing overseas. They're actually doing pretty well overseas, considering the economy. And I think oil drillers are going to always do well. They do well in a bad market. They do well in a good market. Halliburton is one of the better run ones, so I think people see that. Cat's numbers. That company has had some great quarters, and when they miss a little bit or when they're off a little bit, the market really takes it out on them. So
at this point, like you said, just not a lot of volume behind this stuff. Is that a good thing since it's a down day to not have as much volume?
Well, I think what ends up happening with low volume is that you have a lot more volatility. The market can go down a lot faster when there's less support, there's less activity, there's less liquidity. So I think that it's not surprising, and the same thing could be said for an update. If there's low volume and on a major update, it's generally because of lack of liquidity. It's not through any mysterious thing. If there's nobody buying or selling it, when the market goes in one direction, it usually goes a lot more than normal.
What do you think is behind this lack of participation?
You know what? I'd like to be able, if I could answer that, I'd be a multimillionaire many times over if I could figure that one out. You know what it is? I think investors are, they're not going into the individual stocks. They're still investing in ETFs. ETFs have a much lower liquidity ratio on the trading floor. They might be a lot of ETFs doing stuff, but they're very small orders. Whereas if investors were going into individual stocks, you'd have a lot more activity and be more volume in those stocks. So right now, I think that the investors on the sideline, and they're probably waiting to see maybe there's another pullback. Maybe it's time to buy on another pullback. So
looking for direction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for a correction of 5 to 10%. I don't think you're going to see a 10% correction. I do think that 5% would be totally normal, especially in the spring. I mean, that if you look at all the talking heads on TV, that's all they're talking about is the spring softening. Summer gets stronger again, the fall gets weaker, and then the winter we have a push. I don't know if it's going to go that way this year, but it's definitely holding true to form right now. The spring is very weak, and it's weak on low volume, so I don't know. There's not really much to make out of that.
All right, well, there you have it. Maybe people are starting to sell in April and go away rather than waiting for May. That's Peter Costa from Empire Execution, and I'm Deborah Borchardt with The Street.